Welcome back in, everybody. Another edition, First and Orange podcast. Parker Gabriel here, Luca Evans there, your Denver Broncos beat reporters for the Denver Post. It is Friday morning, October 24th, preview edition of the podcast, Broncos and Cowboys, Luca. There's all kinds of directions we can go to on this game. And it's frankly just it's a matchup of one of the NFL's better defenses, Denver, and maybe so far its best offense in Dallas. So I guess let's just start there. It looks like a really fun matchup.
Yeah, the two best offenses in the NFL this year are the Cowboys, and then who's ever playing the Cowboys. So
yeah there you go.
This is a shootout waiting to happen, and then you question yourself, like that's the framework of this game, and then you start to dive into how much can the Broncos limit it from being a shootout, and can their offense live up to being consistent enough? Does their offense have enough bullets to go shot for shot with Dallas in a shootout? So I don't know. This is a I've gone back through the last few weeks. I know we normally do predictions at the end, but I'll just throw this out off top. I think the only game that I've predicted the Broncos to lose in this year was the Chargers game, and now this one. Like, Dallas just looks like there's just so much of this team that is like threatening to Denver's weaknesses. I think that makes this a really intriguing matchup, even though the Cowboys are only 3-3 and have plenty of their own problems. I just, you look back the last few weeks, and the Eagles were 4-0 when the Broncos played them, but kind of reeling a little bit, in terms of their offense. And the Cowboys just hung 44 on the Commanders, and only gave up 22 to Jaden Daniels. So this is a tough one for Denver.
Yeah, it is. It's been sort of a interesting week, I guess. Obviously, there's been a couple of news events that I guess we should talk about. One is, Russell Wilson gate, round whatever it is, 17 or something, with Sean Payton. And that kind of obviously, I think it was after we podcasted early in the week that Russ tweeted out what he did about Sean being classless and still bounty hunting 15 years later, which was incredible. I just was I was sure it was fake when it happened. Yeah. So I guess Sean addressed it, whatever, take it at face value or not, what he said, that he wasn't trying to bring Russ into it with what he said after the game on Sunday. But regardless, that sort of blew over. The Greenlaw suspension did too, in a way, I guess, just because the NFL train just keeps going.
Keeps chugging.
Wheel doesn't stop spinning. But that does, there is obviously some impact there.
Yep.
And then it also it's been sort of an interesting week because the Broncos have won 4 in a row, and it doesn't really feel like it necessarily.
No.
Which for Sean, that's probably the way he wanted it. Obviously, he would prefer the offense was playing better and that the defense didn't give up 6 third and fourth and longs last week against the Giants. But overall, you're just sort of in this mode of they're 5-2. They're in first place. They've won 4 in a row. And also, a lot of the talk has been about, and I think, justifiably so, has been more about, their problems than about what's gone well over the last 4 weeks. So that puts them in an interesting spot because it seems it seems like Dallas, like you were sort of saying, is a little bit the inverse.
Yep.
They're 3-3. It hasn't been pretty. But they also they got CeeDee Lamb back. He played, I think, 77% of their offensive snaps last week.
Yep.
Their offense was humming already without him. And even though their defense has been really bad, they're also getting DeMarvion Overshown back maybe as soon as this week. He's practicing for the first time. And so they're just they feel like they're on the come a little bit. And it's not that the Broncos aren't. They just have sort of got there by way of fourth quarter
magic
and things that you're not quite sure or quite sure aren't sustainable.
Well, and there's only so much you can write about essentially having some as Malcolm Roach called Will Lutz, big nuts
Yes.
Lutz. There's only
Yeah.
so much you can write about fourth quarter guys having big nuts in the fourth quarter, and that's and then you're okay. Well, they're still again. I keep coming back to the fact that they've played like 3 good quarters of offensive football in the past 12 and are
Right.
3-0 in that stretch. Their defense obviously had major problems last week against New York. You throw in the combination of all these factors, and you're like, where do they stand really? I was talking to Mike McGlinchey, who's always wanted to keep it honest in the locker room this week, but just on Bo Nix made a pretty small tweak in the overall scheme of things, but a notable one just in terms of entire group came together on Sunday, entire offense, and watched film, and sounded like they helped them get on the same page a little bit of seeing just plays break down because individual guys weren't doing their assignments at times, and Bo suggested that they do it again essentially throughout the week instead of just only having kind of positional meetings and what have you, that they meet as an offense to watch film. And Mike was saying Bo, like the rest of us, is tired of playing yo-yo offensive football. And I asked him if it was frustrating, the fact that they can't find cohesion. And he was like, yeah, it's insanely frustrating. So the locker room feels it. Players know it. It's great to be 5-2. It's also, and McGlinchey was saying, I'll end this point here, but we can't, essentially the main point, if we can't play like that we're going to run into situations where we can't just play from behind. And this week could be one of those situations because Dallas can just keep putting up points. So
100%. Yeah. And that's what, I think that's the way, and I think most Broncos fans, you if you were in the stadium last week, or even if you're watching on TV, you heard the boos. Obviously there's frustration when the offense just does almost literally nothing for 3 quarters. And at the same time, given where the Broncos have been for the better part of the last decade, I think it would also be fair to look at it and say, hey, they got problems, but
yeah,
all you have to do is sort out a few of them, and you're cooking because you're 5-2. You're already, you're halfway to last year's win total. You have a chance to really kind of make a run at the division and all of that. I mean, Kansas City looks really good the last few weeks, but just from where you're sitting after 7 weeks, I mean, Sean Payton has said in the past, you are what your record says you are. And I think it was Troy, I think maybe asked him on Wednesday, do you believe that with this team? And he said, absolutely. We're 5-2. That's what we are. And so you can be, I think you'd prefer to be 5-2 and have not come anywhere near peaking yet, which is clearly where they are. The rub to that is you actually have to figure out the issues and play better in order to sort of make good on that element. So it's a fascinating sort of position to be in. Let's talk about the Broncos offense, I guess, a little more first. Sean said after the game, some guys are going to maybe play more, some guys are going to play less. That's always a weekly conversation. So I'll just be fascinated to see. I know we talked about this on Monday, but the other thing then is I'm interested to see, and I wrote about this for the weekend, how the offensive line holds up, because Alex Palczewski played pretty well at left guard overall, and I think it's important because at the beginning of the year, this was sort of it's the bedrock of any offense, but for sure the Broncos, they are going to lean on this offensive line, and they needed to be really good because obviously, Bo Nix is a good player, still relatively young in his NFL career, and their offensive skill talent is fine, but it's not overwhelming. And so it comes back to, can the offensive line be the best, unit on the team, and can they sort of like power the offense, and it looked capable of doing that against a good Giants front. But they just have to find a way. They have to find a way to run the ball more efficiently early in games. And that's not always. Sometimes you get more efficient in the run game as you go along. But the last couple of weeks they've struggled to do that at times. And I think, it's not necessarily a ground and pound. Oh, you got to control the clock and keep the ball out of Dallas's hands. But you have to control the pace of the game, I think, Sunday.
Yeah, and I think this game will be a good litmus test too of if we're sitting here a week after and saying Broncos don't need to make any moves at the deadline, they're fine, or Broncos need to go get a receiver at the deadline, because the two main holes in their passing game right now are there's a giant hole right kind of in the intermediate deep middle part of the field where no one's really, there's short slants sometimes and this or that. And Bo Nix loves, especially like when he gets a man, just match up with Cortland Sutton or even Marvin Mims. We saw that last week, especially those back shoulder kind of stuff. But middle of the field and also deep, deep ball that just hasn't clicked, beyond, again, kind of those, I have a matchup I like, I'm going to throw it up to you, you come down and get it. I'm talking about taking the top off of a defense. Like, they just don't have that. They don't have either of those two things right now. And this Dallas defense is, giving up the most passing yards in the league per game. Obviously, they're susceptible to the deep ball. And so if Bo Nix, if Sean Payton, if the Broncos receivers, if Troy Franklin doesn't bounce back, if Marvin Mims has another where's Marvin Mims week, like, we're going to be sitting back and saying, oh, like, they need another piece here or something. So I think that's going to be a good barometer. As you mentioned, definitely. I mean, you can attack the Cowboys in a number.
However you want.
Realistically, they're third in the league, third worst in the league in the run game in terms of yards per game. So this is, when you look back, it's pretty interesting. They've gone 3 and out. This is a pretty insane stat. They've gone 3 and out on their last 5 opening drives, which is in 4-1 in that span. But the run pass distribution, for all the talk of establishing the run game early, it's pretty even. And that includes, 3 straight incompletions last game. And so I think, I just think there's an opportunity here. I feel like the game plan is the ideal game plan is pretty set in stone at this point, where you get J.K. Dobbins going early in some way. You get Bo Nix comfortable in rhythm, and then you come back to Dobbins kind of later in the game as a bell cow. So we'll see how that all plays out.
That story? Okay, so I was thinking about this because, like, the sort of like general way you would think about this game is you've got a good defense, but the defense has a big challenge, and you're facing a defense that's susceptible, and so, like, I think there's a lot of people who would say, okay, you got to establish a run, you got to control the clock, you got to not milk the clock, but you want big time of possession advantage, keep the ball out of, Dak Prescott's hands and away from those receivers and whatever. And yesterday we were out there watching the little bit of practice. We get to see Luca, and I was thinking about the story that Sean's told, and then the reference that you had to it in the story that you wrote about Sean and Bill Parcells earlier this month. And the game where they were playing the, Kansas City top ranked offense, and Parcells came in and was like kitchen sink it basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like just how Sean is wired in these types of games. You can say what you want about controlling the clock, and he knows, like, if they have the ball for 36 minutes, obviously that's better than 26. But he is just like hardwired to say, this defense sucks. We're gonna put 40 on them.
This feels, to your point, that's a great point. This feels like a kitchen sink week. Yeah.
It does. And that's just like, I mean, we'll see, obviously. And you can do both. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the Sean doesn't want to hear about tempo at this point.
No, screens or tempo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
taboo,
like third rails, apparently. But the thing about that is, and I think one of the things actually that Bo Nix does pretty effectively is that tempo and no huddle doesn't always have to mean that you play really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a couple times, in fact, I think it was in the Frank Crum sequence after Sternad's interception. They went no huddle and they got to the line, and Nick still snapped the ball with like maybe 7 or 8 seconds left on the play clock, but they were at the line for 15 seconds.
Yep.
And he moved RJ Harvey around and he was kind of tinkering and whatever, and they threw a slant to Mims, I guess, on 1st and goal.
Yep.
To get down to the 2. And it's like, this is what tempo looks like. You know, this is what it doesn't have to be.
No.
You're playing like, you know, Texas Tech. You're just controlling the tempo of the game. You're not necessarily pushing the tempo of the game to breakneck. So that's fascinating to see how they sort of deploy that this week, because Bo Nix has clearly been more comfortable playing that way. Sean Payton's clearly somewhat less comfortable calling and operating a game that way. So I don't know. I'm fascinated to see if the sort of the last quarter, you know, plus of that game last week is sort of this year's version of a tipping point toward doing more of what, you know, Bo Nix is most comfortable with and a little bit less of the rest.
If you just look statistically, his numbers go up in no huddle situations. Obviously, you can't run no huddle the entire time, but that notwithstanding, numbers go up in no huddle situations. Numbers are better when he's playing under center in terms of rating than shotgun. Obviously, he's playing a majority of the time in shotgun, and that probably won't change. I think overall we have this picture now where he seems to get more in rhythm, comfortable when he's operating like, you know, with this brand of, wow, oh my God. I just noticed the back of my phone is like super cracked. Well, anyway,
brought to you by Apple.
Anyway, getting back on the rails. He seems to get more in a rhythm when he's playing this brand of like controlled, you know, tightly controlled chaos that he has a handle on, but he's playing on the move. He's playing with his, you know, when his feet are dynamic. There are a couple of the RPO stuff or the read option stuff, you know, that seemed to work really well. I think 2 went for just 1 actually, because the other one was the crack toss thing, but went for touchdowns. And I don't know that I don't know that they lean into that more or this or that, but just he just seems there's this balance of like letting Bo cook and also not asking him to do much. To putting too much on his plate, but he's clearly more comfortable, or he plays like it when he's not just this like vending machine, you know, screen, slant, you know, like, so.
Yeah. And he's a terrific athlete, you know, that's the other part of it. And that's what you saw, like I thought it was super interesting. The, like you were saying, sort of like that quarterback, you know, like power crack thing they ran with them on the 18-yard touchdown, ran almost identical play last year against New Orleans. And that game against New Orleans was interesting because it was where they really sort of turned the dial more toward, you know, Nix in the run game last year. And just, it looked different. It just did. There was more RPO. There was more quarterback run. It just felt like a sort of marked change from where they'd been the first 5 weeks of the season, sort of like fourth quarter last year against the Chargers into the New Orleans game, week 7 last year. And so I just it's almost the exact same place on the calendar, right? That was like week 6 and 7. We saw this, sort of like fourth quarter in week 7, obviously last week. So the offensive plan and the Knicks usage, especially in the run game, is obviously something to watch going forward. Like I don't subscribe to the theory that you can realistically design, 10 runs for him a game when he's also going to end up scrambling some too and all of that. Like you can get reckless with how much you're asking him to run. It's just like, can you bump the dial like 1 or 2 notches without it going too far, without putting him at too much risk of injury? And so that's like that's part of the challenge. And certainly, I mean, like you heard Sean talk about earlier this week, I mean, it's just like, it's the age-old thing at this point, this era of football. When you put the quarterback in the run game, you end up with better numbers, sort of like regardless of what you're doing. And so that, that's part of it for sure.
Yeah,
we've got a big challenge.
Yeah, look at this.
Yeah, that's very cracked
for our viewers at home. Yeah, and I don't even know when or how it happened.
It looks like blunt force too. That's not like
it
and it's spider webbed.
Yeah, which is crazy. At least it's on the back and not the front. At least if there's consolation. Let's spin this into a metaphor about how the Broncos defense was clearly, cracked up a lot last week, but ultimately
on the back
maintained.
end, even, really.
On the back, exactly.
That crack right there is Daniel Bellinger with nobody within 15 yards of him on the back end of the defense.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the really interesting, as you think about every possible piece of this Cowboys offense against this Broncos defense, it's like you cannot engineer an offense more suitably prepared to come in and like exploit every possible flaw that the Broncos have defensively based on previous 7 weeks. You have a quarterback in Dak Prescott who's among the best in the league right now in not taking sacks, even though the offensive line has been, iffy. You have a really good play action game that you can't like sell out with Old Faithful Javonte Williams, that you can't sell out to, either to do anything really. You can't sell out against anything. You have a wide receiver 1 in CeeDee Lamb who is really good, just really detailed on his routes, really good footwork, probably will slant up Pat Surtain a couple of times, which has been how teams are trying to attack him this year. You have
like
a wide receiver 2.
You can really
that's the only thing you can do. Because no one's beating him deep. You have wide receiver 2 in George Pickens, who is significantly taller than Riley Moss, who's leading the league in yards against press coverage, who draws a ton of flags, like the worst matchup imaginable for Riley Moss. So that's going to be super interesting. And then you have a tight end in Jake Ferguson, who's 4th in the league in catches, has 6 touchdowns in the red zone. Or I don't know if all of those came in the red zone, has 6 touchdowns through 7 games, really good in the red zone. And the Broncos just gave up like 150 plus yards to tight ends last week against the Giants. So just a real kerfuffle of different elements for this defense. And I think the likely scenario is like they're going to give up yardage this week, and they might give up 25 plus, honestly. But can they, I saw a lot of the talk around like takeaways. They don't have that many, kind of overblown until you run into a game like this and you're like, oh, you need negative plays to win this game. Like you need someone to pick off Dak Prescott. You need some break to go your way. So that's going to be important, I think, because you're not going to just shut down the Cowboys.
Right. Yeah. It's not like doesn't have the feel of a 13-10 game or something like that.
No.
Which, I mean, you never know, but yeah, that's so the Cowboys have been good. I mean, they're tied for 9th, I guess, in the NFL in red zone touchdown percentage. Obviously, the Broncos defense has been really good in the red zone.
Yep.
The Broncos gave up, like we were talking about, I think 5 or 6 third and fourth and really longs last week, which is completely like sort of antithetical to how they've played this year. There's been 3 games, I think, this year where they've allowed 2 third down conversions for whole games. And the Giants had not only like 3rd and 11, 3rd and 17, 3rd and 10, but also obviously the 4th and 19 on their last touchdown drive. So even with a bad outing on 3rd down, the Broncos are still like pretty comfortably first in the NFL on 3rd down. And so it's a really like, it's just good on good. Like at the bottom line, it's a terrific matchup. I was thinking, we were talking about this when we were out there the other day, Luca. This is just like life's really good for George Pickens right now. Yeah. Like last year, Justin Fields was his quarterback. When they came to Denver with Pittsburgh, he came to Denver week 2 last year with Pittsburgh. Justin Fields was his quarterback, and he's like clearly the top receiver. So he gets the Pat Surtain treatment like the whole week.
Yep.
And now he comes back. He's got like an MVP candidate as his quarterback. And he gets like Riley Moss instead of Pat, which listen, like Riley's a good player.
He's been playing great. Yeah, but just in sheer matchup, like a physical tools and strengths. Yeah.
Just, are you better off with like being covered by Pat Surtain or not? The answer is, or not. So that's the like, and that I think also speaks to just how balanced this team was. Vance Joseph made a really interesting point yesterday. He said the Cowboys are averaging 6.2 yards per rush out of 11 personnel. So obviously 3 receivers and a tight end and 1 back. And the reason is just because teams have not been willing to put extra people in the box and leave their defensive backs one-on-one against those receivers. I don't know exactly what, I mean, if there's a guy out there who is willing to do that, it's Vance. So that's like that's a pretty spicy like matchup. You're going to have to decide, are you going to, you trust Pat Surtain and Riley Moss down the field one-on-one with these guys to try to keep a running game in control? Or are you going to bet that, Javonte Williams, who's had a great year so far and all of that, like that, okay, they might run the ball and move it between the 20s, but will shut it off, in the red zone and when we really need to. So that's kind of like he called it the cat and mouse game. And that's exactly what it is. It's like, how do you want to play them in the middle of the field? You want to play aggressive and try to get off the field and risk them hitting the big play down the field? Or do you want to try to keep it in front and let them move the football and then bank that you can sort of stop them, more towards scoring range? So fascinating, like great matchup between Schottenheimer and Vance.
Yeah, and Javonte has, I think he's close to 8 yards a carry. I was looking this up on Next Gen Stats, but he's close to 8 yards a carry against a light box this year. So, but I do think, the Broncos have the personnel. I don't know. It's interesting because the way that the staff talks about Riley Moss, I could easily see Vance trusting his corners enough to leave them in a fair amount of one-on-one situations. I could also see them saying, let's make Javonte Williams beat us and prove that, he is this reborn guy that we didn't see for the last couple of years in Denver. So we'll see. I think the interior defensive line is going to be particularly important in this game, just for the nature of whichever route they choose, especially if they do go lighter box at times. Those guys, DJ Jones, JFM, Zach Allen in the run game, Malcolm Roach too. I just wrote a little thing. Obviously his energy is so important, but he has 9 tackles in 60 snaps overall this year, which is crazy for a defensive tackle. So he's been super important just since coming back. So,
and if ever there was a Jahdae Barron game here in the first half of this
which
season,
I want to point out, we've said that maybe about 4 times
every
so
week,
far, every week, and none of it's came true. But I fully agree with you.
Well, but I think the obviously like Jaquan McMillan is going to play a ton. Like, in fact, Riley Moss talked in the locker room earlier this week, and he kept referring to the challenge, not just for him. He said me, Pat, and J-Mac, and like that's definitely true. It's a group effort, but the plan on Ferguson will be interesting. I'm sure that McMillan and Barron will both end up over him at times. But yeah, I mean, you've got sort of your hands full across the board when you talk about, it would be interesting to me if the Broncos thought about putting Surtain on Pickens at times and not playing quite so much like, Riley on Pickens and Surtain on CeeDee Lamb. But assuming that in some way, shape, or form, Surtain's got Lamb, Moss has Pickens, that leaves you with obviously your nickel dealing with a tight end a lot. So there's just and then Turpin obviously is like a speed guy too, and a tough matchup. And Wan'Dale Robinson gave them a lot of problems in the middle of the field last year as sort of like a diminutive, shifty guy who can really get open. So there's just it's one of those games where it's like you could ask me at 3 different times over the last 3 days which matchup I'm most interested in seeing, and it might be like a different answer each time.
Yeah, I don't know. Jahdae Barron didn't have a great game last game. I think he's been effective at times this year, or shown signs of like, Vance tossing him at nickel, and he's almost playing this like weak side linebacker type of role where, and then can play capably, especially when the field shortens. So I think maybe we see him in some like red zone situations, maybe even for, J-Mac, where he's kind of shadowing Ferguson or this or
Well, it's
that.
also just the quality of tackler that he's been. I mean, that's the, there's an interesting realm in which they think that's their answer to playing the sort of light quote unquote in the box against that sort of 11, personnel stuff from the Cowboys, because if you think he can play a little bit and hold up enough in the run game, and then you still have a good coverage answer, then we've said that before too.
We have. He's the biggest variable of this. Like every single member of this draft class, I think, like it's been a lot of talk about how they're not contributing much, and like it's for a reason. Like Harvey will be fine. He's not. It's just a role thing with him right now, and he's also not getting blocks consistently. But just the pass pro, like Pat Bryant's fine. Savion Jones isn't playing because this defensive line is crazy. Pretty much same with Q Robinson. Right. Like there's justifiable explanations. I think Jahdae is the only one where you start to feel like at some point, when are we gonna like see it? This year, and maybe we don't see it as a rookie, and maybe he still has a really productive and great NFL career. It's just, at some point, I don't think it's at some point you would like to have considerable on-field production from your first round pick, in a year where you're trying to contend. 100%. And so, we'll see.
Plus, like all those guys, not that this is the important thing now, but like literally everybody in the secondary is also under contract next year. And so it's like, and that's not to say.
Well, J-Mac.
Yeah, he's a restricted free agent, I think. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They have at least like control.
They have rights. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, listen, like the guy is playing at a high level, and he's like held off a first round pick who they're really high on in terms of playing time. So he's like clearly doing a lot right.
Good stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fascinating one. I already know that you picked the Cowboys, Luca, but tell me you got a score, and let's twist it this way. If you're wrong, which you have not been very often so far in predicting games, but if you're wrong, it will be because why?
Offense.
Yeah.
Offense gets on track. Basically, I think I predicted 31-24, something like that, Cowboys. I could see also Broncos hold up a little stiffer, one or two of those touchdowns. Most likely one go away in the red zone. If I'm wrong, it'll be because they get have a couple key or one or two really key turnovers or stops in the red zone or this or that, and Sean Payton throws the kitchen sink successfully, which again can very well see happen. I'm not locked into this prediction. So yeah.
I also picked the Cowboys 28-24. I mean, similar, stuff. Just like I think the Broncos are fully capable of winning this game. I mean, they have the NFL's longest home winning streak at 8 games. And, there's been times this year, like against Indianapolis, like, they got in that sort of offensive, a little bit of a track meet, and the offense got in rhythm and played really well. And that's clearly, I mean, Indianapolis's defense is better than Dallas's so far this year. So they are more than capable of doing it. They just have played so inconsistently offensively the last few weeks that I'm willing to take one where you pick it wrong, and it's like, well, yeah, this was the week they broke out. That's great for them,
So exactly.
It's a little bit of a believe it when you see it offensively now. And the only way I couch that is just by saying that, like, we understand that they are capable of doing it. It's just a matter of sort of like actually finding that groove. So there you go. Couple of haters picking the Cowboys this week. Should be. I mean, it's gonna be a fun one. No matter.
Yeah, it really will. Yeah.
So
it'll be good.
We'll be there Sunday in Power Field. We got a ton of stuff about the game, about the week, about Russell Wilson, but anything you want Broncos related. DenverPost.com/Broncos for all the latest. That's Luca and Parker. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you Sunday.